Welcome back. You're still tuned in to the Tuesday edition of the nation's most revered breakfast show, Good Morning Namibia. Now, last year, Namibia was more reliant than ever on electricity imports. According to the IPPR quarterly economic report, overall imports accounted for 71.2% of total electricity supply to the country, making Namibia acutely vulnerable to developments in the rest of the region. Joining us with more on the current electricity status in the country is the Deputy Director from the Ministry of Mines and Energy, Mr. Abraham Nangula. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning to the viewers.
Let's please get right into it, sir. What is the current status of electricity supply to Namibia?
So we're not doing very well. So I suppose as many people know, and it's like you introduced, we are importing a large share of our electricity from the region. This trend has been going on for quite a number of years, and we share, or rather we import depending on the share of supply from our biggest power station, the Ruacana power station up north. So it supplies us about 50% of our power. And of course, when there's not good flow and we can't generate using that power source, then obviously we have to import to make up for that difference. So the latest audited figures are that we are importing somewhat. The last year we imported about 70% of our electricity demand or so. So it's really not that good.
In line with your concession that we're not doing well at the present moment, please flesh out some of the key challenges that we have been experiencing as a country in that regard over the last couple of years, if not decades.
All right. So like I indicated earlier, Ruacana, which is our biggest power supply station, that gives us that's in terms of installed capacity, is about 50% of our electricity that we get from that station. So obviously, if that is not supplying, then we have to import a bit more. And coupled to that, our demand is growing. So you have a situation of where the demand is growing and your biggest supply source is dwindling. And also, some of you might know of the station just outside of Benduk, the Van Eyck Power Station. That's a coal-powered station, and it's aging, so it needs to be decommissioned at one point. So we've been getting ever so small power from that specific station. So the combination of all of these factors have made it such that we have to import a bit more. But we have done good in this past couple of years. We have a number of power generation stations that have been popping up since 2014. So yes, we are working on it.
Sir, please tell us, why is it so hard for Namibia to become fully energy independent? And why is this a challenge to build a new domestic generating capacity despite those strides that you just touched on?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question, and one that is giving us sleepless nights. There are several reasons. Suppose all of them never really good enough, but the combination of these reasons make it such that we are not able to fully supply our own demand. And maybe let me just, from an economics perspective, and I suppose as a government also, the idea is not necessarily to fully meet our demand, because if you can get the power cheaper elsewhere, and if this cheap power is reliable, then there's an argument that perhaps to keep your cost low, you want to import where you can. And having said that, that would be one of the reasons why we haven't closed our gap faster than what we are trying to do now. In the past, there was abundant power in the region, and it was really cheap power. So I think this put us in a relaxed mode, and we didn't do quite as much as what we could have done. Now, of course, all of that is changing. Like I said, our supply from Ruacana has been dwindling, and the power in the region is getting a bit more expensive.
And a lot less dependable, one would also say, sir.
Just repeat that again, please.
And a lot less dependable.
Yeah, in the region, absolutely. Well, yes, that I think is a factor. So I think as much as we should have started earlier with putting up this new capacity, I think the emphasis is, the focus is really on us now. I think with all the factors that I've just mentioned and what you just added there. So we are now really going on the drive to try and bridge that import gap.
Yes,
But
sir.
like I said, we have been putting up a couple of plants, and if I can just give you the stats there, we have roughly 22 power plants now, and we started the first one in 2014. So if you look at 22 power plants from 2014 to now, that's relatively fast. So that's on average 2 power plants per annum, and that's as good as any country that's doing right now.
Very briefly, sir, would you not say that that is a little bit too late in any event?
I would say yes, it would have been best if we had started earlier, but it's what it is now. And like I said earlier, it was cheaper to get it in the region, and not an excuse.
Thank you.
And also maybe another.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Maybe another?
Okay. No. And another factor is that, look, electricity is not just a matter of getting amount of electricity in the region. So there's a balancing act that needs to be done. So the issue is always about meeting supply and demand. So we have a number of power stations now that we have been doing, and we can meet our supply during the day, for example, with solar. The problem is your evening and night time, where you don't necessarily have a power plant that can meet that gap.
Thank
So
you,
we
sir.
get that power relatively cheap from the region. Okay.
If we have regard to what you shared with us in your introductory overview, namely that the latest audited figure indicates that we imported about 70% of our electricity needs, is it then correct to infer mathematically that locally we had capacity of only 30% of domestic generation? And could you perhaps break down the 70% import to us in terms of South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe?
Sure. Yeah. Yes, those figures, the 70% and 30%, because it's a semantic issue, but they refer to our electrical energy. So yes, we only supply them 30% of our electrical energy from own resources. So the balance is almost evenly split between South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. How that is done, of course, is the colleagues at NemPower that balances when we get from South Africa and Zimbabwe and Zambia. And also, we can also tap into the South African power pool.
Speaking about the colleagues at NamPower, is NamPower planning on constructing additional generating capacity as part of its integrated strategic business plan?
Yes, they are. And in fact, they are busy with a number of projects now. Can maybe go through the projects that they are doing.
Briefly, please.
There are about 6 projects. Sure. So there's a 20 megawatt solar plant at Omburu, that's near Omaruru. So that was commissioned last year. Now, that was part of a portfolio of projects that we call the ministerial determination that included another 20 megawatt solar power plant, which should be commissioned sometime next year, 2 wind farms that will give us about 90 megawatts. They should be completed in about 2025 or so. A diesel power plant in Walvis Bay, or heavy fuel oil, but whether diesel is a better term. So that should also be completed roughly in 2025 or so. A biomass plant in the Tsumeb area, and a battery energy storage power plant, which would also be completed roughly in 2025, 2026 or so.
So by your own admission, it might be a little too late. You also said that it is what it is. Do you then believe that the progress in these projects on the cards for NamPower will be fast and sufficient enough?
Yes, okay, that's perhaps an unfortunate term that it is what it is. But in a sense, look, we've never really. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you, sir.
Okay, sure. Despite the import, we're managing the process, and we have never really load shed before yet. So we are managing it, and we are reducing that import gap. and we are hopeful that it will be reduced very soon.
As we are wrapping up our conversation, sir, and we have run out of time officially, you said Namibia has never officially load shed before. We do know that a third of the 70% of the electricity that we import hails from south of the Orange River, where load shedding is completely
Yeah.
normalized at present. What are the prospects of
Yes.
load shedding for our country, unfortunately?
Look, that's a question I can't answer with much confidence. Anything can happen, but we are doing the best we can right now to prevent that from happening. But it's not something that you can 100% rule out. And load shedding in this case might be due to a technical glitch or anything like that.
So thank you so much for your time. Good luck to you and the team.
Thank you very much.
That was Mr. Abraham
All right.
Nangula, Deputy Director in the Ministry of Mines and Energy, talking to us about where we stand as a country in terms of a looming energy crisis.